Welcome back to this week's Hushlife podcast. Today we have the opportunity to sit down with Daniel Richins of the R&K Hunting Company. We discuss a variety of topics, including wildlife management, the hunting industry, and an entrepreneur mentality. Remember, the best thing you can do for this podcast is to subscribe and leave a rating on your favorite podcasting platform. It really drives us to create more content just like this. Thanks, guys, and enjoy the show.
Welcome back to another episode of the Hushlife podcast. We are sitting in a backyard, a beautiful sunny day here in northwest Utah, joined by, as he's coined himself, his second favorite cameraman. Is that what you call yourself?
Yeah, the second favorite cameraman.
So Matty Ice is here. Matt, you want to introduce our guest today?
Yeah, guys. So we are at the home of one of my favorite guys and favorite role models, Daniel Richins and his wife, Andrea. And we are getting here today, hopefully, to pick his brain about kind of his entrepreneur mindset when it comes to the hunting industry and kind of some crazy hunting stories, because I know he's got quite a few.
Matt prefaced this with saying that Daniel and his kind of right-hand man, business partner, and jack of all trades up at the ranch, Cheeto, have a lot of wild stories over the years. So I'm sure we'll definitely get into some of those, but Daniel and his wife own R&K Hunting Company, and if you guys have been following along for any amount of time, over the last 2 years at least, you should be quite familiar with their business, their brand. We actually just gave away a mule deer hunt that we are super excited to be doing later this year in October. We actually found out our winner also last week. He is a local Utah person, which is the first time we've ever had that. So that's going to be exciting. We're going to be going up there chasing mule deer in October, and it's going to be Caleb's opportunity for his very first mule deer. So pretty extra special there. But then we also spent time, we filmed our Can-Am Live in the Land episode up there. We filmed Gage's first ever elk hunt up on R&K. And it's where, honestly, we met Matt. Matt was our guide on Gage's hunt, and we'd kind of seen him and known him around a little bit, but Matt spent several years guiding up there.
Yeah, it's really where I learned basically everything I know about hunting is from Daniel and Cheeto and the people at R&K, and super grateful. They're like family and still are, and yeah, it's a special place.
So we wanted to talk to Daniel, and there's a cool story there. Like, if you guys have followed along by now, you kind of know that my passion, aside from the hunting stuff, is also just business and being an entrepreneur. And Daniel has a really interesting story, kind of how he got started into what he's doing today. Got a lot going on. Just from the outside looking in, there's a lot of logistics to deal with in this type of an industry. And I always applaud the outfitters that have so many various things happening at one time and are able to maintain the customer service and the experience that you would hope, because it could easily go sideways, I feel like. But Daniel, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thanks for having us, and me and my wife Andrea. But we've been pretty blessed as far as being able to do this for a living. Hasn't been easy by any means, and there's been a lot of times where we've thought about actually quitting. But we've got fantastic people that work with us, and that's what we always say. No one works for us. Everybody works with us. And they're really, all of the credit goes to our staff, our guides, and the customer service like you're mentioning, and something that sets you apart from everybody else, because there's so many people in the industry and getting into the industry, and you have to figure out a way to win the tie. And that, in my opinion, comes down to how you treat people, how you communicate with them, and, not over-promising and over-delivering, and really just the small things. And that happens more often than not even on the hill, prior to their hunt, where it starts in the office with Andrea talking to them. So
absolutely. So walk us back to the old days. I'm super curious, how did you eventually first start this kind of road that you've been going down for quite a while and get into the idea of starting to guide an outfit?
Well, I've always wanted to be a guide and do something outside, whether it, be a rancher, be an outfitter, whatever it is. And I knew that at a very young age. I remember talking to my dad and saying that I wanted to do this, as early as 12 and 13 years old. But, we don't have any family land or anything like that. So when I was 14 and 15, I started making phone calls to some of the outfitters that are in the town, one in particular that I know, and seeing if he would hire me as a guide. And he kind of just laughed and he says, "You don't even have a driver's license." And so I said, "Well, I'll do anything." And so they would use me to scout. When I did get my driver's license, they would use me to pack a lot of their animals off the hill. And so back in the day, before there were cell phones, they would call the school. I went to North Summit. They would actually call the office, and then the office would beep you into class and say, Daniel's got a phone call at the office or whatever. And I'd go to the office. It'd be this outfitter, and he would say they had an animal down. So I'd leave school, come home, get a truck and trailer and horses, and then go up on the mountain and pack an elk off the hill. And he'd explain to me where it was, and I'd have to try and find it and go do it at 16. And then as I got, insurance wouldn't cover me, and so I think I did my first guiding when I was probably 17. And then it's just kind of, I did my first guiding for other outfitters at 17, but I got my first hunting lease when I was 16 years old.
So walk me through that process. Like, you seem to be way ahead of your days as a 14, 15, 16-year-old, to start wanting to go proactively, work for somebody else and kind of cut your teeth, get the experience. And then B, to have like the vision and the drive as a 16-year-old to try to go secure a lease. What was the mentality kind of behind that, and how did you go about getting it to be? I mean, it doesn't sound easy from an outsider's perspective to kind of go find a lease to even secure. Like, walk me through that process.
Yeah, back, and this is 25 years ago, or 20 years ago anyway. And, but I mean, it wasn't that long ago, was it? I was 16, 640. Yeah, it was 20 years. Hell, I'm getting old. Yeah. So, I mean, it was, back when I started, there were hunting clubs and a handful of outfitters. There wasn't like today. I think it'd be very hard to recreate what we've been able to put together from R&K standpoint today. I actually don't even think it'd be possible to do it. But it's something that I always wanted to do. We didn't have anything growing up. We had a couple of horses and a 2-place horse trailer. No 4-wheelers, no ground, no trampolines, we had our fun on the hill. We'd get off the school bus and go up on the hill or go down to the river fishing and show up at dark back to the house, and that's kind of what we did. So, I always wanted to have something that I enjoyed. My dad worked 7 days a week and did everything under the sun just to try to feed 8 kids. But I had a real good friend up in Chalk Creek, east of Colville. His dad had a ranch up there, and so I would ride the school bus to his house on a Friday, and I'd work Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and come back to my house Sunday night and go to school again when I was young. And when I first decided I wanted to take people hunting, I talked to this landowner up Chalk Creek, and what I did is I worked for 2 years. I put up 3.5 miles of fence, and he wanted us to cut all of the wood posts off of his ground. So we would pound in 5 steel posts and then dig a 3-foot hole, bury a wood cedar post. So we were cutting cedar posts off the ground, dragging them behind a 4-wheeler to where they need to go. And so I worked for 2 years for him, and I traded him 3 years worth of the hunting on 1,200 acres and a 2-year-old unbroke filly. So that was my pay for 2 years.
So then, bartering 101 to get in the door.
Bartering 101, yeah. And my first clients were some people that were friends with my grandpa in Salt Lake City. And I took school off, I took football off, put a tent up. I was the cook, I was the guide, I was the everything. I made them peanut butter sandwiches and hamburgers and spaghetti. That's the only things I knew how to make. We took them. I took them up on the hill hunting, and that had just kind of progressively grown over the years. by the time I was 23 or 24. We were doing it pretty much full time. And
so at that point in time, had you gone out and secured any additional property, or were you kind of maintained that initial 1,200 acres to kind of build off of from 16 to 20 something?
Yeah, so every year I would add to that.
Okay.
The neighboring ground that I was trying to get, I would add to it and add to it and add to it. And then I don't know if this is, some people remember United Sportsman. So when did we get married? 23 or 4, probably 23. So I bought into United Sportsman. I had went and talked to a couple of landowners to lease their ground, and there's 4 of them. And back then it was called PHU, not a CWMU. It was called a private hunting unit. And there was 4 of them. 2 of them wanted to lease to me. 2 of them wanted to lease to United Sportsman. But we needed the entire acreage block to make it into a PHU at that time. And so I partnered with Cal Haskell, and what I said is, you take half the tags, half the season, and they just sold hunting permits, so you do it yourself, come up and camp and do your own deal, and then I said, you take half the season, half the tags, I'll take half the season, half the tags. And then I got to be really good friends with Cal, and Cal had some other leases that we pulled in and made. Then that's really where we separated United Sportsman from being a non-guided hunt experience to a guided hunting experience. And so we partnered and got that piece of ground, and then within 3 or 4 years I went and met with a rancher in Wyoming and met him every day at 6 a.m. at McDonald's in Evanston, and he drove me around for 7 days straight in his truck and showed me all the ground they had. They had from Evanston to Fort Bridger to Kemmer, Wyoming, and I made him an offer when I was 23 and put a bid in on it, and we were able to get that bid. And so that just, every year we've just been progressively growing, and I've been pretty fortunate to have what we have now.
Yeah, that's just like such a crazy experience. Just again, thinking to the 16-year-olds that I know right now, and how few of them would be in a position to try and go do something like that. Particularly back then too, you didn't have the luxury of, some of the technology that's readily available for people to even help like identify possible landowners' names. Like you had to do it kind of the old school way through networking. And
no, I spent hours and hours and hours at the courthouse going through maps and looking at property ownership and who owned what, and there was no Onyx, there was no nothing, and even buying into United Sportsman, I asked Cal if he was interested in a partner, which he wasn't for a year, and then I finally convinced him. And then when we came up with the value to buy into United Sportsman, I didn't have any money, and so, but I was doing a lot of concrete, a lot of flat work. And I did a job up in Echo Canyon for a guy. He had a huge indoor, or a barn. He wanted to make an indoor shop. And I did all the flat work in that barn. And I noticed to the side of the barn, he had a bunch of old logs that had been there for 3 or 4 years. And it was actually a log kit for a home, and that he had bought and was never using. And so I traded him the concrete work for all of those logs. And then I took the logs over to Heber, 1 trailer load at a time, and had them cope the corners, and I built 7 little cabins that were portable. We'd pick them up and move them, and that I used that as my initial buy-in to United Sportsman to become a partner with them.
It's like the story where somebody takes like a pen and continually trades up until they eventually have like a car. You've
like
seen
Porsche, yeah.
Have you seen those?
Yeah.
And it's like a challenge almost. And man, it seems so similar to that. Like,
we have done so much bartering and trading, and labor, building fences, building high fences, pushing in roads, doing concrete, just because we never did. I mean, we could barely afford to feed ourselves, huh?
Well, that's what's interesting, right? Is like you willed yourself to figure out a way to make it work when you didn't necessarily have the capital sitting around to, just easily buy into these new properties or opportunities. You had to come up with an alternative means that still created enough value to the, person or the landowner. And again, that's just such a unique skill set and, vision to try to go secure that, because a lot of people I feel like would stop because that's the barrier of entry. Like, well, I don't have any money to do that, so I guess, we're not going to be able to make this one work out. Whereas, your approach was getting super creative and figuring out like, okay, well, what's some stuff that you need that I can provide through labor, hard work, trade, and that was able to like get you over that kind of barrier of entry that a lot of people probably would have stopped at.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's hardly anything that you can't just figure out, figure it out. We say that all the time. and you obviously have to have a very supportive partner.
Yeah.
It was when we had our first kid, McCain, I remember I'd be up all night long doing numbers and figuring out ways to try and make the business better or make it so we could be full time. Because for years and years we weren't full time by any means. We would just hunt during the hunting season, and then I'd shoot horses for 16 years. I welded. I poured a ton of concrete. I did plumbing, HVAC. I had an excavation company. I had a crane. I tried everything under the sun to make a living. And I think it was year 7. And I remember after having McCain and not having any insurance and the medical bills, talking to Andrea and saying, maybe I'd be better off just getting a job at the county or at the cement plant, which is 5 miles down the road, because they had benefits and they had, insurance and whatever. And it was year 7 before we were out of the red and into the black, and I think we had less than $3,000 that year. But I remember being so happy that we finally weren't upside down. We weren't carrying deposits from the next year to pay for bills for this year, and it was 7 years into it. And there was a lot of times that I was like, really questioned myself whether we were going to actually be able to do this as a living. And
what kept you going, like, through those challenging times? Because I know we've talked to a lot of people and I've read a lot of stuff, and it seems in most cases like anything that's like eventually successful business-wise often takes about a 10-year run for it to finally like really kind of settle in as a successful venture. And leading up to that 10 years, to your point, you may be in a really tough position financially, emotionally, because it's super stressful when you're trying to provide for your family. What kept you kind of going to want to stay the course?
Oh, probably my wife more than anything, actually. So most people can't work with their spouse or their family, but we have a great working relationship. And she's got, when I would be down and saying this isn't going to work, or like, I don't think I've ever heard her one time ever say that this won't work or we can't figure it out. So she's out constantly saying, we can do this, we can do that. Or honestly, I think I probably would be working for somebody else if it wasn't her reassuring that we can actually do it. And I remember, getting clients was a big problem. I could have the ground, but if you didn't have any hunters, then, it didn't do you any good. You could have all the ground in the world, and if you didn't have hunters, then you weren't making any money. And I remember driving to Sidney, Nebraska to Cabela's multiple times. And before we could email a picture or whatever, just with a printed off picture in a photo album saying, here's what we killed, here's what we can offer, here's what we're doing, and being turned down year after year after year. 4 or 5 years in a row, they wouldn't accept me as an outfitter to book for me. And then we flew to a show in Pennsylvania, and I walked up to the booth, and they all had known me because I'd been bugging them for years. And I had a brand new shiny photo album with, just pictures, 3x5 pictures in it, and I gave it to them. And by then we had a CD at the time, so I'd burned music onto a CD. My brother did it for me, and we had a 15-minute little promotional deal, and they finally said that they would book for us, and that's really what kind of got us over the edge, because I had access to the property, but I didn't have access to the hunters.
Yeah, right, because back then, what was the standard protocol? Websites weren't really that much of a thing, so it was probably just word of mouth.
Going to hunting shows.
Hunting shows, yeah.
Hunting shows, word of mouth, and booking agents. Cabela's was the largest booking agent, and but they have a heck of a reputation, and they just weren't willing to put their name on, a
new guy, right?
A new guy that they hadn't been with or vetted, and
sure.
And we went from, they booked 4 hunters with us the first year, a group from DuPont, with a chemical company, Ag Chem, and I think in the top of our seasons, they were probably booking over 250 hunters with us.
Wow.
And then that's gone the other way to where, I'm still loyal to Cabela's as far as giving them certain dates and, in the premium of the season, and they bring out their top employees or their top clients or whatever, and they'll do some hunts with us. But, it's gone from booking 250 clients with us to, maybe 20.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's in long and short. That's kind of how it's played out.
Yeah, and to give everybody an idea, Andrea is sitting here listening. We're having some issues with the mic, so that's part of the reason why she isn't being able to kind of speak up and contribute after being such a huge part of the success. I'm impressed by all measures that you guys can work together as a husband and wife couple, because to your point, Daniel, not easy for a lot of people to work with their spouse or their immediate family. I've only met a handful of people. The company that does all of our screen printing and embroidery and fulfillment, Eagle Eye, they are also an anomaly where they work together as a family and spend all of their time together. It's like, and they never argue. They never fight. Like, they're so great. So it's very rare that you see that, because I love my family dearly. There's just no way, though, that it would work. There's no way. It is extremely rare, and I won't take any of the credit for that. It's her on that deal. But, it would amaze you how many of the hunters, when they come out, their first question is, am I going to be able to meet Andrea when I'm out there? Because she communicates with them all year long, and tells them what to expect, what to bring, who's going to pick them up at the airport. She gets their licenses. The stuff that gets done in the office is the not fun stuff. Well, it's what sets up the hunt to begin a great experience, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of the clients that you have are busy business people that are coming in, or on the maybe the contrary, there's somebody that is saved up for a lot of years, and this is kind of like their one chance to come and maybe shoot an elk or a mule deer. And there's a lot of logistics that go into getting it going, from travel to what tags to accommodations to gear, you name it. And I think that's the differentiator between like a great outfitting and guide company and one that's maybe not as great, is the communication and the expectations that are set up front.
Sure.
We talk to people that have horrible experiences all the time, from Alaska to anywhere in the West, because predominantly, like, a lot of it wasn't teed up to begin with.
Sure.
And then when they get there, that kind of continues and lags over into the hunting experience. And I think that's the real difference maker, frankly, for any business, but certainly one like this. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, you can ruin a hunt before it even starts.
Yeah.
Or you can turn it into a positive experience. I've always said that, there's so many outfitters that and I hear them every day. Literally every day I get, probably 100 phone calls, and I hear people who have had bad experiences with outfitters.
Yep.
And I've always said the only thing you need to do to become a successful outfitter is just do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah.
And it boils down to that. Do what you say you're going to do. So if you're, don't overpromise something and then not do it. It's very simple to be, in my mind, it's, to be successful, just do what you say you're going to do. You can always find something to blame a bad hunt on. And this is another thing I've always said. If I can't put you in front of a deer or an elk in 5 days, and you have an opportunity to harvest a deer or an elk, then I shouldn't be selling that as a hunt.
Yeah.
Whether it's bad weather, whether it's a full moon, whether it's hot, whether it's, you break down, get a flat tire, take all those into consideration. If I cannot put a deer or elk in front of you in 5 days, I shouldn't be selling that hunt.
Yeah.
Because everybody blames it on something. They had a bad hunt and, it was hot. And those are factors in a hunt for sure. But you need to have the quality of ground that even with that being a factor, you can still have a successful hunt. And a successful hunt is not just harvesting an animal. I would say that's probably we've taken the approach that's that's above and beyond your hunt. Like
Yep.
we're going to control all of the controllables. You're going to have great attitude from the guides to the cook to the help to the person picking up at the airport. The attitude's going to be great. The equipment's going to be good. The food's going to be outstanding. Everything's going to be comfortable. We're going to control everything we can possibly control because there's so many things that you can't control on a hunt. And if you do that, then regardless of whether you get an animal or not, you've still had a successful hunt.
I think it's important too for these kind of things is finding out what kind of an experience does the client want to have, because a lot of people have different expectations. Some folks are all about trying to shoot the biggest thing they can possibly find, and that's the only thing that matters. But a lot of other people, they want to just get away from life and have a good experience and be out in the mountains. And you know what, if they get something awesome, but it isn't necessarily like the driving factor behind whether or not they view it as like a successful hunt.
Sure. No, that's absolutely true. And, we book people every day, and I tell people that they wouldn't be a good fit every day too, So if I don't have something that they're looking for, I'll let them know right out of the gate or refer them to other outfitters that, maybe have what they're looking for. And I don't try to just get the sale to get the sale.
Yeah.
Because, that's never going to end up good if you just book somebody and you don't have what they're looking for. But I would say almost every single hunt, short of the guys that, we've had clients that have been with us ever since we started, 20 plus years. But new people that come out, by the time their hunt is over, I would say almost everybody looks at the hunt in a different way. Because they come out thinking just what you were saying, I need to kill an animal, I need to get something this size or score this big or whatever. And then they may meet a guide like Matt and take him up on the hill and we'll point out a sunset to him or a sunrise, or the wildflowers or stuff that, they're not even looking at. They're so laser focused on an animal rather than the experience. I can't tell you how many people I've said, look at that. And, they think that I'm pointing to an animal. And then they're like, well, what are you looking at? I'm like, look at that sunset.
Yeah.
And I'm videoing it, and it just changes their focus on the hunt.
Speaking of that, so as a business owner, and you've been doing this a long time now, what do you look for in a guide when you're maybe trying to add somebody to your team? Because obviously there's a lot of young folks that would love to kind of get that first opportunity to go cut their teeth as a guide. So what are some of the core competencies or skill sets or traits that you guys really kind of try to identify?
Well, they have to be honest. They've got to be honest. They've got to be really good with people. I'd rather 100 times over take somebody who's honest and has a great personality and is willing to learn than someone who says, I've done everything, shows up and says, I've guided in every state and every animal and, I'm the best of the best of the best. Well, that's not the attitude that R&K really has. Mm-hmm. So, we need I want guys that stay humble. They need to be able to listen and take direction. And you have to wear different hats, because you're with a different person every 5 days that's got a different personality. Some people want you to talk to them for 5 days. Some people don't want you to listen to them for 5 days, right? Some people want you to teach them and show them what you're doing. Some people think they know everything. You have to be able to get along with somebody for 5 days, which we say in all of our guide meetings, you can get along with anybody for 5. I can get along with anybody for 5 days. Yeah. But the handful of people, it's not even a handful. Out of 500 hunters, it'll be less than 1 or 2 that have an issue. And it's generally miscommunication from a booking agent standpoint. It's nothing from... So the people that come out and hunt are very, very good, people. And we've had a few that we've uninvited to come back, but that list is very small. But as far as a guide, you just need to be able to be willing to work and learn and be humble. I can teach you, because we're a service-based company. We provide a service. Yep. So, the controllables, the little things, the attitude, we can teach you how to hunt.
Matt, what advice do you, having been a guide for a lot of years, anybody that's listening that might be maybe considering going into becoming a guide, what kind of advice would you give them?
Yeah, biggest thing that jumps out to me is try and get with an outfitter that mirrors a lot of R&K's attributes. the thing that sets R&K apart now that I've been able to hunt around separate outfitters in different states is the way we work as a team. It's such a huge team factor at R&K. We're like brothers. It's the same group of guides normally every year. We hunt really well together. We keep no secrets, like literally zero secrets, and that's such a big part to having a successful hunting company, I think, is working as a team. And gosh, it's just crazy hunting with some other outfitters, the way they compete against each other, and it's just like everybody's going around each other's backs. But biggest advice, like Daniel said, is just be honest, have a good work ethic, and you can never, it's okay to be wrong, it's okay to admit that you're wrong, but never try and act like you know everything, because the second you think that, you're going to get slapped in the face with reality, because there's always somebody that's better than you, always somebody that knows more than you, and once you accept that fact and just are humble, I think there's a lot of room to excel and a lot of room to grow. And it was crazy because, like, my first year guiding, I was 18 years old, and I had killed several deer and several elk on my own. And I remember meeting Cheeto at a hunting expo, and he was like, yeah, I kind of follow you on Instagram. Would you like to come work for us? And I was like, yeah. And it was crazy because I was, the first year I guided, I was like the only new guide. And being able to have some of these guides that have been guiding for 20 years take me under their wing and show me all these tips and tricks. And I found a big deer, and they let me go hunt the big deer instead of a guide that had been guiding for 20 years. And it was like, they gave me a lot of leash.
Yeah.
And I think that really is what sparked my love for R&K, and the people behind R&K was they trusted me and they let me run. And it's just been super fun to be able to learn so much. Like, I tell people this all the time, if you want to get into like the hunting industry or become a proficient hunter, there's no better way than to guide. I mean, I don't know how many animals I helped skin a year when I was guiding full time, probably 100 at the skinning rack. And you'll never be able to help skin or pack out 100 animals doing any other thing. Like, there's no way. That's
what I stood out to me is the volume you guys are capable of, just a lot of, because of the land that you've eventually, over that time span been able to acquire, which translates into a lot of hunts. I don't remember the number. I know you would probably know it, but how many, like, between deer, elk, moose, what kind of total number of hunts do you guys typically try to run a year?
Well, we're around probably 500 hunts.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And they're all a fully guided 5-day meals, lodging, transportation to and from the airport. That's between deer, elk, moose, mountain lion, and bear.
Okay.
And so you can do anything from, we have camps in Wyoming that are horseback wall tent camps and level 5 physical, and that whole experience to, private property lodge hunts on private land, and archery, rifle, muzzleloader, crossbow, anything in between. If you, we do a lot of disabled hunts, and some hunts we've been fortunate enough to give away to charity for multiple different reasons. But if you're in a wheelchair and not mobile, we can get you on something. Or if you want to hike or ride a horse 25 miles a day, then we have that, and everything in between.
Yeah, very accommodating to a wide group of hunters.
Yeah, so when someone starts to hunt with us, they can hunt a different species in a different state, and they literally can hunt 10 or 12 years without doing the same thing twice.
Yep. The reason I bring that up is to Matt's point about work ethic. That really was what stood out when we first met Matt on Gage's elk hunt, was the effort and the hustle that he put in. And then just like talking through and how many hunts he had been on previous to that and how many he had kind of after that, and just the amount of, at kill site experience you gain in a season is really unlike most other operations anywhere. And it's, again, tied back into that volume. And also the team component, right? Where a lot of times Matt's client may have already tagged out, and then he's jumping over to help somebody else pack out a successful kill. And so he was just explaining like how many freaking deer and elk and moose he was packing out in a season. We're just like, oh my gosh, that is like an insane amount of effort. Because, most of them you're packing out on your backpack. You're not just driving up in a truck and throwing them in. Very different than some of them out there. But what a great experience builder for anybody. I think, something like breaking down an animal is one of those deals where with repetition, like anything, you become more proficient, you get better, and it becomes easier. And a lot of times folks aren't, able to have that experience as much because you maybe only have one tag in your season. And if it's not successful, it could be a couple years before you get back on an animal and trying to remember how to break it down. So you just gain a lot of proficiencies. Glassing is another one that stands out. Spent so much time glassing up there. It's a muscle memory thing. You just get better as you do it more frequently. So that was one thing that stood out. I was like, dude, you're packing off a lot of critters in a year as a guide.
Yeah, our guides, hats off to all the guides. If someone gets an animal down and they come back to lunch, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've seen a guide put a plate of lunch down, hasn't taken one bite of it, and walked out the door to go back up on the hill to carry something off for another hunter. Yeah. So, somebody gets one down, everybody that's available goes and helps until it's off the mountain and taken care of the right way. And, we don't have to ask them to do it. Yeah. Everyone wants to do it. They know that's what's expected of them, and it's not really it doesn't feel like a job to us. I don't think it feels like a job to a lot of our guides. They're the ones that bring the client back, right? So another thing we like to do. And I've been on quite a few guided hunts too, and I never guide the guide. I let him, say whatever he wants. But we try to involve the hunter in all of our decisions, whether it may be their very first hunt they've ever been on, it may be their 50th hunt or 100th hunt they've been on. So if we see an animal, we'll say, well, here's where he's laying down. How do you think the best way to sneak in on him, or what do you think we ought to do for tonight? Or, involve your client because they soon go from a client to a friend, in just a couple days. Yeah. And so you're hunting together. You ask them for their opinion and what they think, or if you do something, you explain, here's what we're going to do, and here's why we're going to do it this way. Yeah. Because a lot of people, and I may be wrong on this, but myself, I like to learn everywhere as I go. I like to learn, why do you do that, and what's the reasoning behind that, or what made you decide to do this versus this. And our guides are open with, sharing with the client, here's why we're doing it this way, and if the client has a different way or wants to do a different way, then we ultimately do it the way that the client wants to do it. Sure. So, people like to be involved in decision making, and they're spending a lot of money to come out on a hunt, and no one likes just to be told, go here, do that, sit here. They want to be. It's a team effort when you're on the hill.
A lot more fun that way, for sure, right? Yeah. When you're part of it, not just being told, here, do this, do that. I agree too that the teamwork thing really stands out. We don't do a ton of guided hunts. However, some of the ones we've been on, like, it is very competitive between the individual guides, and they even when they may have tagged out, they're kind of still holding back on some intel that might lead them to a successful, like, second season hunt or something. When there's clients currently in camp that are not tagged out yet. So that's something that I think, just from like the lens of the customer, is really nice when you have a team of people working together on the same page to help all the clients out that are in camp, not just your particular hunter. And obviously it goes to the idea that if you have everybody happy, and a good chance they're going to probably come back, or recommend you to one of their friends or colleagues or something. And it's fun to see a culture of people that, although driven and alpha males and competitive, still willing to like come together and help each other out for the betterment of the business.
Yeah. And that's what it is. It's a business. Everyone's got to be on the same page, and there can't be any secrets or camp champs or anything like that. If that's your mindset, it's going to fail, pretty quick.
So you've had an opportunity, obviously, to experience a lot of amazing hunts. with all your years of this experience, what stands out as like your favorite species to hunt? Number one, I know we've debated religiously back and forth of what ours is, and it oftentimes kind of teeters between the mule deer person that's just a very, very passionate mule deer hunter, or obviously the elk crowd, and back and forth. I'm very curious if those two rank at your top, or if you have a different species that you're really passionate about hunting.
No, those probably rank at the top. I probably enjoy hunting mule deer a little bit more than I enjoy hunting all of them. Archery, and I enjoy archery hunting a lot. I enjoy rifle hunting, but and when elk are in the rut and just going crazy, it's pretty hard to have anything that beats that. But outsmarting and trying to find a big trophy mule deer is one of the hardest things that we do, and that's what I enjoy probably hunting more than anything, just because of the challenge of trying to find a big one, number one, and then outsmarting and getting number two. It's we've had a lot of deer every year that we've got on trail cameras, or we've got them on phone scopes, and we have 60 days to hunt, and a lot of these deer we never get. So we're on the mountain 60 days hunting a particular deer every single day, and a lot of them we never get. So
chalk one up for Team Mule Deer. Matt's smiling.
Yeah, and you have to have a lot of respect for an animal like that. We have places on all of our ranches that are sanctuaries. Like if they make it into those places, it's off limits to hunting.
Really?
Yeah.
Walk me through that
for multiple reasons.
Yeah, I'd love to hear about that.
It may be right on a boundary where if you go in there, you can push them off of your ground. Elk are very susceptible to being pushed and moved, and if they find a place they're going to get less pressure, they're going to stay there and they're not going to come back. So, just from a strategic standpoint, you don't want to go into an area that holds a lot of elk and hunt it the wrong way. A lot of areas on the ranch we hunt one way from obviously our boundaries in to try and keep all of the animals, but you have to, with as much pressure as you can put on animals nowadays, you have to have places on all of your leases that is a sanctuary, that if they make it to there, it doesn't matter if it's day 5 of your guys' hunt, you're not going in there with a rifle and blowing them out of there. Mm-hmm. If they get in there, they've won, they're safe. We'll shoot them as they come out of there or go back into there, but once they're in there, they're off limits. And, it goes back to a little bit of obviously keeping the animals on the ground, but it's kind of a respect deal too. I mean, if you got beat by that deer or that elk, you got beat by him.
Yeah.
And try to outsmart him. And, you don't have to, not every animal on the mountain's got to die.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about the conservation efforts and thought that you guys put into managing your property, and just I know you have a lot of involvement with Utah Department of Wildlife, and give us a little bit more insight into what it's like to kind of navigate through some of those complex issues, but just in general, like your philosophy for the properties that you do have.
Sure. So, I mean, if I possibly can, I want to control the grazing, the recreation, and the hunting on every piece of ground I have. That doesn't happen on all of them, but it does on a fair amount of them, because they all go hand in hand. And if you're heavy on one thing, you can hurt the other. So if you overgraze a piece of ground, then it's not going to be good for hunting. You can push the deer and elk right off of it. If you put sheep in an area versus cattle in an area, you can push the animal right off of it. So we do a lot of habitat improvement projects every year with different entities. Mule Deer Foundation, SFW, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, the DWR. We'll do, lop and scatter on the juniper trees. We do a lot of spring development. We'll do cross fencing so we can do rotational grazing and leave certain pastures. Every other year they get grazed, so it's a rotational grazing that's better for the ground. We do a lot of, every year we have multiple projects going on, whether it be reseeding the winter range, anything to just help that habitat. Because ultimately, if you don't have the right ground and the right feed, then you're not going to have any animals, But all of these ranches, too, a lot of them are 3rd, 4th, 5th generation ranches. So, when we're hunting up there, you may run into a sheep herder. with 5 dogs following behind his horse and, pushing 1,000 head of sheep. And there may be multiple herders on that ranch. And also there may be cattle on the ranch. And then aside from that, they may have been leasing out the recreation. So you're dealing with horse rides or ATV rides. So these ranches nowadays have multiple streams of revenue, and you have to try and manage all of those without hurting any of them, really.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I can imagine it's complex too, just dealing with the fact that a lot of the property is leased, having to deal with like the families maybe that are owning the ranch, the entities that are helping with the conservation initiatives. There's just a lot of moving parts to make it all come together. With you kind of having to be the architect behind this is why we want to do these things, not only for, the hunting component of it, but also helping the operational ranch on grazing side of it, making sure that it doesn't interfere with their recreation if they're kind of involving that. Just a lot of stuff going on throughout the course of the year to like have it to where everyone is able to utilize the property that's going to be most beneficial to them, which isn't too different from like public conservation components, right? Where there's a lot of different entities that are all trying to get a multi-use component, to the land that benefits everybody, not just one group.
Sure. I mean, one of my leases, there's 26 different landowners that comprise that one lease.
Wow.
26 different families, 26 different contracts, 26 different personalities. Some of them are a handshake agreement. Some of them are a 30-page lease, So balancing that and being able to keep the core property together is a challenge in and of itself. So you got to be able to get along with, and that falls back to communication. You can't get tied up getting so busy doing other stuff or focusing on your business that you don't communicate with the people you're leasing their ground if they need help doing something, or just checking in and saying, here's our plan, here's what we're doing, do you need anything done, can we help you, or whatever. And to sending out the lease payments to Andrea's kept relationships with landowners key. You've got to keep a relationship, open communication, because there's a lot of misunderstandings if you don't keep that line open.
Yeah, absolutely.
It can create a lot of problems.
So with all the stuff you got going on, do you have time to go out and do hunting of your own?
I did a brown bear hunt on Kodiak Island this year that's been on my bucket list for a long time. And
unreal.
Yeah, it was took my 2 boys, and it was fantastic experience. I loved every bit of it.
So we did our first taste of Alaska was 2 years ago. We did a Kodiak blacktail hunt. So it was a boat-based transporter hunt. And we saw 6 bears during that week. We saw 2 sets of moms with cubs and then 1 large boar at about 300 yards. And I was with Logan and our friend Dylan from Onyx, and we were just all like chin just dropped. When you see one of those big boars, even at 300 yards, which to me is still quite a ways away, but yet close enough to be like, all right, we're not going to go that direction. Yeah. It was really something else. Yeah. I'd love to hear more about like how did that take place? What time of year was it? How many bears did you see?
Oh, geez. He had a cancellation, Lance Kronberger.
Oh, yeah.
And
okay.
A good friend of mine, Mike Taylor, called and said if you can make up your mind in 4 days, he's got an opening for, because I was on the list to go in 2028. And I called him and I said, if I can bring my boy, can I bring my boy? And he says, yeah, you can bring your boy. That shouldn't be a problem. But I could tell he wasn't a big fan of it. And then I called him back and I said, can I bring my second boy? And then he really wasn't a big fan of it. And he's like, this is really no place for kids and this and that. I said, well, my kids are going to be help. They're not going to be a hindrance. And I had to kind of convince him that it's not, it's going to be no more babysitting for the guide and this and that and the other. And by the end of that hunt, he had offered both of my kids a job.
Nice.
And said to give him his card and his number and said, both you guys can come back up. But we did it in, when did I go? May or something? May? I think we did it in May. I killed the bear on day 8. We were seeing 20 bears a day.
Wow.
It was unbelievable. It was absolutely unbelievable. It's completely different than like I have a camp east of Jackson Lake in Wyoming, and we have major grizzly problems in that camp. You know, we'll lose 1 out of every 4 elk to a grizzly. We'll come in and mock charge you and at 10, 15 yards and take the elk we killed. So going from having nuisance and problem grizzlies and maulings all the time in Wyoming and Montana and everywhere that they can't be hunted, to a bear that's 2 and 3 times bigger, that sees you or hears you or smells you and runs as hard as he can run the other direction, is pretty astonishing to see.
Did you guys get dropped off in like a float plane?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we flew from here to Seattle to Anchorage to Kodiak, then got on a float plane in Kodiak and went to the tip of Kodiak and landed on a lake and right to a tent. And then we'd walk every morning up onto a lookout point, and we would glass, and the guide would make the call whether the bear was big enough to get a closer look at, or whether it was a boar or a sow, It was an awesome experience. I would do it again in a heartbeat, and just to have the time, because my boys work with me, so I'm with them every day and do stuff with them every day. But it's work related, you know, to take time off and go on a hunt like this, and you know, it's a large investment to go on a hunt like that, but it's worth every penny. I wouldn't have done it if I couldn't have been there with my boys.
Yeah, what a cool experience. So when you finally got the green light of like, yeah, that's the boar that we need to go make a move on, how did it all go down?
He was coming towards us, and we had snuck in, and we had a couple of stalks prior to that we got winded, and they just took off. I mean, huge bears. The bear I ended up killing was 9'4", and I don't know what he weighed. He was just enormous, but he was coming to us, and about 500 yards, he turned and just started walking kind of parallel to us up a canyon. And my guide pulled out a predator call and hit a predator call. So I'm in prone position, and the furthest they've ever shot, you know, they want those bears under 200 yards when you hit them because they're just so big and tough. And he turned, started walking away until he heard this predator call. Then, I mean, he literally spun on a dime and started walking right at us. And so he gets to about 250 yards, and I'm laying down prone, and I have him. I can easily take him. And my guide's wanting him to get closer. So he's coming closer. He's working this call. Well, he goes from a walk to a lope. So he starts loping right at us. And I have my 2 boys each running a camera, you know, kind of over my shoulder. So I go from laying down. As he's running towards us, he gets into some alders, and I don't have a shot at him anymore. And I'm looking at this patch of alders, and we're on a little mound, you know, halfway up a hill, and he's running up the hill towards us. And I'm looking at this patch of alders, and I see that when he comes out, he's going to be at 30 yards. I have no shot until he comes out. So I go from being prone to pulling my bipod all the way out to being on my knees, and you can see they videoed it. And I mean, I'm like, this bear's running at us. And so I pick my gun up and I check to make sure I've got one in the bear. I knew I did, but I double checked to make sure. And so I'm on my knees now, and I have my scope turned all the way down, and I can just see his forehead and his hump just running, bouncing towards us, loping towards us. And then I turned and my guide's like, shoot him. I'm like, I don't have any shot going through those trees. You know, I said, I'm gonna have to wait till he pops out, and then I'll shoot him as soon as he comes out. So then I go from kneeling to standing, because now he's so close I can't get the angle on him. So now I'm standing and shouldering the gun, and I look, and my kids are progressively backing up the hill, still videoing though, but they're way behind me now. And my guide's like, shoot him. He came out at 35 yards, and I shot him, and he whirled and ran straight off the hill, out of sight. And I'd been telling my guide the whole time, don't back me up, unless my head's in his mouth, do not shoot at my bear. And he wasn't a fan of that. He says, I was his 51st brown bear hunt. And he says, I've put bullets in every one of them. I says, well, don't put them in mine unless you have to. And so he whirled and ran down off the hill, and we picked him back up about 250, 300 yards going up the opposite face. And I had double lunged him. and he was slowing down, and then I had to hit him 4 more times. The 300 PRC 212 grain bullet.
They're incredibly
tough.
Yeah.
And then
Most of those guides that I've ever talked to, it's like there is no debate. They are shooting.
Yeah.
The second you shoot, they're shooting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you have a bear of that size coming to something that he wants to eat, and you're 30 yards away. I mean, if he was close enough that if he would have turned and ran towards us, then away from us, I wouldn't have been able to rack another bullet in and get a shot at him by the time he would have been on you.
Yeah.
So that's why they've got the gun and
For sure.
too. But he turned away and ran away. And then, the whole experience with the bear and my kids being there, and then my youngest kid, the height on those things is 110 pounds.
Yeah.
So my youngest kid threw it on his back, and the guide kind of laughed and says, "You want to pack it out?" And he's like, "Sure." And so he put it on him, and bugs. He's tough kid. McCain had all my gear. He was packing my backpack, my gun, my spot and scope. So my kids, they doubled as my little pack mules and Sherpas for the 8 days. But
what was the how are you feeling when you were on the gun standing? Like, I
wasn't shaking. Like my guide,
yeah.
I could tell that he, and we had talked a lot, and he got to know me over the 8 days and whatever. But like I said, I double checked to make sure I had one in the barrel, but I was 100% confident that when that bear come out, I was going to hit him.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't going to turn and run. Like I was going to hit him, and I was going to follow up with another one, and I was ready for it.
Did you have like an adrenaline dump after it was all said and done and the bear was down, and you at any point in time? Because I've always envisioned one of those Kodiak or coastal brown bears that is truly a different caliber of predator. It would be such a different kind of like buck fever, if you will, that you get.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely had a shot of adrenaline, for sure. But I wouldn't say that it was like once it was over and done that I processed like how many ways that could have went bad.
Yep.
I wasn't really nervous that way. It was just something I've dreamt of doing forever, and I wasn't going to go on it. I told Andrea, I'm like, that's a crazy amount of money, and I can't be gone for 10 days, 14 days, and she just said, you're going. And so anyway, kudos to her for letting me go on it, mainly telling me to go on it. But it was, I think I'd been anticipating it for so long. It wasn't, at no point in time was there ever a letdown or did I felt scared? I was nervous going up there just because of the interaction we have with the bears in Wyoming. They are not like the bears in Wyoming. Grizzly sees you in Wyoming and doesn't run away from you. It comes at you, or it'll charge you, or it'll maul you. Up there, if they smell you, they're out of there. You can get in a bad spot if you wound a bear and it gets in the alders,
sure.
right? And stuff can go south that way. But other than that, after day 2 or 3, I didn't feel nervous at all.
Settled in.
Yeah.
That was like we were kind of told, if you guys get a deer down, just have an escape route. Try to get the wind right. Don't horse around. Like, get it processed soon.
Yeah, get out. Yeah.
And then basically, like, if the bear wants the deer, just give them the deer.
Give them the deer.
They don't want you. They just want the deer.
Yeah.
And when we were up there, they actually had a neighboring boat had an encounter, and they ended up shooting one of the sows with cubs.
Yeah.
Which was unfortunate because they made a calculated error after they killed a deer, and they kind of continued hunting and hung it up and came back and had an issue with the bear. And that's a whole nother ball of wax when you got to get Alaska Fish and Wildlife involved in investigations, and certainly nothing that we wanted to mess around with. But isn't it interesting that the grizzlies that are interior in Idaho, Wyoming, Montana are honestly worse than the giant Kodiak bears? Far worse.
Yeah. That, they haven't been hunted for 45 years. They're not afraid of anything, and. My Jackson camp is, it's not uncommon in there. There's some days you'll see over 10 grizzlies in that camp on an elk hunt. And, a rifle shot is a dinner bell, and literally is a dinner bell. They hear a gun go off, and you will have a bear around you,
Which I've heard, like, the hunting up in those kind of regions of, just outside of Yellowstone can be incredible elk hunting. But
It's
You got the
different elk
bears.
hunting though. They don't respond to a call. They're bugling. It's just like where there's wolves, right? The predators have changed the habits of the prey on how they act and how they react and what you have to do to hunt them and get close to them and everything else. So, but
I know you've had a lot of involvement too with predator management on your guys' place and kind of working with the Department of Wildlife on trying to change some of like the old school ways that maybe tag allocations were given for mountain lions predominantly.
Yeah.
Can you give the people listening just like maybe just an idea like from your perspective on the amount of lions that you guys see in the year? Because I think it's pretty, I don't know all the details, but I've heard enough about it through you and Cheeto and stuff where it's way more than anybody would ever expect.
Oh yeah, by far. So I mean, our deer population in the state has gone down so far from what it was in the 70s and 80s and even the early 90s, and that we just weren't we didn't know. I mean, I knew how many that lions were killing, but we didn't have any collared data on the cats. Everyone just assumed they knew a lion was killing 50 deer per year. Well, the last study that has come out shows that they're killing 125 deer per cat per year.
Wow.
And I mean, the first year we had a bad winter kill in 2018-19. We lost 75% of our deer population. So we went from 10,500 deer down to 2,500 deer in one winter. And that winter, I really worked over the Fish and Game and the DWR to get away from the draw system for the lions. Because, when you're in a draw system, it takes a resident 8, 9, 10 years to draw a tag. You're trophy hunting. Yeah. I mean, when I drew my tag, I put 34 lions in a tree before I shot one, and so we had to get away from the mindset of managing predators and start managing our deer and elk. There's no value, and not that you have to you couldn't get rid of the lions in the state if you want to, but you have to keep them in check. And same with bears, same with coyotes. A lion's no different than a coyote or a wolf if a wolf got down here. Mm-hmm. But I mean, in the Chalk Creek unit, in the last 3 years, we've killed over 130 lions.
Wow.
And you put 125 deer per cat on that. I mean, it's crazy amount of deer. The very first year they went to a harvest objective, we killed over 50 cats, between depredation tags, the landowners and the quota. I mean, we were 50 cats.
Wasn't most of that in like a core area too? You'd kill a big male and then like literally the next day another male would move in.
Oh yeah, I have a map and I GPSed every animal, every lion we killed, and I put a blue dot for every tom, a red dot for every female, and then, I mean, I killed 11 toms within 2 miles of each other, So all of the data that the division was going off of and what people thought they knew about lions is, not accurate at all. Mm-hmm. I killed a lion that was tagged in Colorado and killed it in Chalk Creek. We have a lion that they tagged by mesquite right on the Utah line down below St. George that's up east of in Teton Park right now, a 3-year-old female. So we have a lion that came right through Chalk Creek the other day, and she has got a GPS collar on her, and she's east of Flaming Gorge. So she came from, Spanish Fork and Hobble Creek area to Flaming Gorge, a female. So they go back and forth, and, they do have their territories, but it's not a, drop a pin and go 25-mile radius around that pin or 14-mile radius, and there won't be another tom in that area. That's absolute baloney.
Yeah. Have you been able to see a positive impact since that's happened?
Absolutely.
On mule deer?
Yeah. We have the highest fawn recruitment that we've ever had since I've been an outfitter. We have the highest number of yearling deer that we've ever had. We have the highest number of deer per section that we've ever had. And like I said, I couldn't kill the lions out if I wanted to. There's multiple areas in the state that have been an unlimited lion tag for 30 years, and guys still book a 5-day hunt and go down there and kill a cat in 5 days, and so you could, but you do have to manage them, mm-hmm. and the division's been great to work with as far as letting us, take the gloves off and manage them because if we're below objective by that far, 50%, 70% below objective on the herd unit for the Chalk Creek area, then do what you need to do to get your objective back up, and the single biggest thing that we can do to make the fastest impact is predators. If during the winter, if there's a lion on me, I'll know about him and I'll have him killed.
Yeah. What obviously you kind of mentioned coyotes into that equation too. From what you guys have seen over the years, what kind of damage, or is there data that's valid as far as their level of success on killing deer?
For sure, yeah. So our coyotes are going up. So we've got more issues with coyotes now because I didn't realize, but like they followed one particular lion around last year. It had killed 16 badgers. It had killed 19 coyotes. It had killed I don't know how many elk, how many deer. So, I mean, lions kill a ton of coyotes. So now that we don't have those lions, we're getting a whole bunch more coyotes. So
interesting.
By far and away, my number one issue for my deer right now is coyotes. They kill more deer than lions now.
Have you guys seen it up at your place where they're working as like in teams?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they obviously kill a lot more fawns than anything, but they'll kill a mature deer, they'll kill a mature buck. Just people don't think that they kill a mature buck. They do all the time.
Yeah.
So I've seen 50 different times where a pack of coyotes will get around a deer and work just like a pack of wolves and hang on it and wear it down until they can finally kill it.
Eric has some crazy footage from probably like 8 or 10 years ago of where he captured like a pack of coyotes surrounding a mature mule deer and killing it.
Yeah.
And something that you don't see a lot probably in, just like the average person traipsing around, but certainly seeing a lot of situations where there's, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 coyotes working together.
Oh yeah. That's our biggest problem. And you think about it, back in the decade or the era that we had so many deer, and your dad or your grandpa was out on the hill and there were just giant deer everywhere and tons of them. The government trappers were still allowed to put out 1080, a form of poison that is canine specific. It only kills canines, but it had a 7-year kill cycle. So you could treat a carcass and go scatter it around a ranch, and if a coyote chews on that bone up to 7 years, it would. Like I have ranchers that I lease from now that are in their late 80s and early 90s that can tell me the very first coyote they saw on their ranch, and they were in their 20s.
Wow. Mid
20s before they even saw a coyote. So they've exploded, and our deer population has shrunk.
Yeah.
So everything has to be kept in check.
Yeah. I grew up in Oregon, and so I was in high school time frame, and unfortunately a ballot initiative got on the Oregon ballot to remove the ability to hunt cats and bears in the state of Oregon with dogs. Mm-hmm. And where we used to hunt as a kid growing up, to your point, and when my dad was there before I could even hunt, the amount of deer and the quality of deer was just unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then as I got older into my 20s and beyond, like that area of the country now is just terrible.
Yeah,
for deer hunting. And obviously, as you would expect, the cat population's exploded because there's just not a real efficient way to kill them outside of running dogs.
Yeah, there isn't. That's by far, in a way, your most efficient way to. But that's a predator that you can keep in check. Same with bears. Coyotes are just, they're so much harder to trap. Your only real good form of keeping coyotes in check is, harvest them in the winter with a helicopter. And if you don't hunt them in the winter with a helicopter, then they can explode. And it's hard enough just to maintain them doing that. Because you can trap for a whole year and go out calling for a whole year. If you kill 20 coyotes in a year, 25 coyotes in a year, that's about as many as you can get done. You'll kill that before noon out of a helicopter. Mm-hmm. So, but a lion and a bear, totally controllable. Hunt them during the winter when they're laying a track down, or the bears before they den up, and use your dogs, and you can keep those managed.
Yeah.
So once our objective gets back up to where it needs to be, then we'll lay off of, how many cats we kill. We'll keep that in check. And the nice thing about working with the division is we have over 3,000 collared animals in the state now. So deer, elk, moose, lions, we know where they're going, what they're doing. We used to think we know what they did, but that information changes daily. And that's, kudos to them for noticing the problem and then making changes to try and fix, let us hunt them until we get things in check, and then lay off them. And if we're at objective, then we can maintain. And if we're below, then do the things you need to bring it back up.
How far do you think away you are to getting back to the objective level that you guys want?
I think I've killed enough lions to get us to our objective, but I think our objective, at least in the Chalk Creek unit, which is about 1 million acres, little under 1 million acres, I don't know, I think we'll probably see our objective in the next three years probably.
Yeah, that's great to hear.
Well, what's crazy is we went scouting up one of the ranches this last weekend, and even from the last 3 years that we've had that ranch, the number of deer since we started putting some control on some lions, we saw probably 600 elk and 60 to 100 bucks up in those basins. And it was like everywhere you were pointing your glass, you were seeing deer. And they weren't huge, old, mature deer, but they're that 4 or 5 year old that in a couple years, because I think in that, like you said, the 2018 winter killed a whole lot of those mature deer. To where now those are all 3-4 year old bucks that in 2, 3, 4 years it's going to be crazy.
Yeah, because I've gone through 3 winter kills the time in my lifetime as being an outfitter. None of them had been as bad as 2018, but they've all been bad, and we've rebounded from all of them. But it's taken so much longer than this one will take. I can every ranch I have, just like Matt's saying, I can go up and I can physically see a difference by having 100 plus less lions in the landscape. It's just so many deer that they kill that people don't have any idea how proficient they are and efficient in killing deer, and they can't process rotten meat. That's half the reason why they kill so many animals. A bear can. Yep. A bear will kill something and bury it and come back and eat it when it's rotten and full of fly eggs and flies all over it. And but a lion can't. It can't digest rotten meat, so it'll kill something, only eat what it wants to eat. Then when it's hungry the next day, it kills something again. And then your female, she does a lot of killing, just teaching her cubs how to kill. I come across so many deer that don't have one bite of anything taken off of them. They've been killed by a cat, and they just sport killing, or teaching their cubs how to kill or whatever. So that's been greatly underestimated. That's been our biggest issue, I feel, much more than habitat. Everybody says habitat's going away for the deer. The habitat in Chalk Creek's better now than it was 30 years ago. We've cross-fenced ground. We've managed springs. We've taken down junipers. The ground now is in better shape than there's less livestock on it. It's getting rotated around. The habitat in Chalk Creek is better than it was when we had so many deer. So the habitat's not the problem. What is the problem? It's not overhunting. That's not the problem. It's not overgrazing. The problem is predators. Winter kills and then not keeping predators in check. Yeah. That's the only thing that's changed to make that big of impact to drive our deer numbers down.
Have you noticed the upswing in elk in the last few years?
Yeah, I have, and they do affect deer at some level, but that's a resource now that as a state we need to look at, because we'll sell out of general season elk tags before in 4 hours. And we're looking at ways. I'm on a couple committees. We're looking at ways where we can give people a guaranteed tag, because you can't have a guaranteed deer tag anymore. So some of these limited entry units, that's another thing with the collaring data we have to manage a unit for an 8.5-year-old bull. 95% of every elk will hit the peak of as big as he's ever going to get when he's 6.5 years old. So on these units we're managing for 8.5-year-old, it's a 1-to-1 bull-cow ratio. And you would think when you have that high of bull-cow ratio that all your cows are getting bred. It's a 50% calving on those. 50% of every cow is open on a unit that's managed for 8.5-year-old bulls. So you're having you're not regenerating the population. They get broken up and they fight so much that the average score on an 8.5-year-old bull is smaller than a 6.5-year-old unit. If people knew the real statistics on drawing a limited entry tag, if you're just jumping into the game now, you wouldn't even do it. Like, it's over 100 years before you even pull a tag. Yeah. So we're to a point now as a state where, elk is a pretty hardy staple. Like, it takes a hell of a bad winter to kill an elk. You about can't kill an elk with a winter. So that's a resource that we need to jump on, especially as an outfitter. Like, if I can't bring my deer numbers up to where they need to be, then I want a strong elk herd. Yeah. Because I got to pay a lease regardless of the wildlife, whether I make it off the deer or the elk, or we manage for the deer or the elk. We need to manage for both. Deer just have they have a lot more things going against them to survive. So, but our elk numbers are going up. We're going to make some changes in the state to where I feel people now, at least myself and everybody I've talked to, it goes back to, you don't have to harvest an animal for it to be a successful hunt. So you as a new hunter, an issue I have with the state, and I've been trying to get changed, is you can take your hunter ed and you can't hunt until you're 12. And I've had a 12-year-old myself in my household that's put in for a deer tag and just passed hunter ed and doesn't even draw a deer tag. Yeah. So why aren't we guaranteeing these tags for the youth, as versus the 65, 70-year-old guy that's killed 50 deer in his life? Why is a youth not getting a tag? Yeah. If we don't get them out in the field, and I think we're to a point now to where we certainly need limited entry units and units that are managed for trophy quality bulls, but would you rather have something to hunt in the state of Utah every year, put a tag in your pocket, and have the state manage for maybe a higher volume of elk, so you can have a tag, go on the mountain and hunt, versus not even have a tag at all?
Yeah,
we're
big advocates of go hunting.
Yeah,
life's short.
Go.
You don't know what's going to happen.
Go. Yeah, I mean,
getting kids out there is so paramount to like continuing this tradition down the road. And
absolutely.
It's interesting, man. Like, to me, the point system across a lot of Western states is broken, right? Yeah. And the only advantages for the older folks that are like in the game with max points or just below max points was nothing more than just timing. Like, you were at an age financially secure enough to be a part of it when they started. Yeah. That's it. But man, for anybody else that's like getting new to hunting, kids, adults that are just trying to get into it, to your point, man, you're not going to draw one of these mediocre or above tags.
It went from being a once in a lifetime hunt to possibly and probably never in your lifetime,
which is wrong in my opinion. Like, I would personally, and I can't speak for everybody, but personally, I would much prefer a random system like Idaho has, where there's no points, and you know what, your top tier units are still going to be exceptionally hard to draw, but at least you're on the same statistical level as any other person.
Sure.
Regardless of how old you are, how long you've been putting in for. Yeah. Everybody's on an even ground, and at least you have a chance.
At least you have a chance.
And if you do some studying and you're meticulous in your research, you can probably find some opportunities that are there, but you got to put in a little effort. And I would love to see that change, because, man, all the states out west are getting harder for non-residents to go pull a tag. A lot of them are changing the tag allocation. It's becoming more difficult, and it's unfortunate that as a resident of the state of Utah, it is not easy to get a tag to go chase elk or deer anymore.
No, it's not, and we're gonna change that. I mean, I'm on a elk advisory committee. There's 20 plus people on there. We do a 7-year management plan, and we're going to address a lot of those issues. The surveys we've been sending out, people want to just be able to go out on the mountain with their family. Yep. But when you could get a deer tag every year, 10 years ago, and it was a guaranteed deer tag. I mean, think about it. In my lifetime, we had a muzzle. I could buy a tag. I could hunt with a bow. If I didn't kill one with a bow, I could hunt with a rifle. If I didn't kill one with a rifle, I could hunt with a muzzleloader in November. And those have all gone away to where, I may get a tag every 2 or 3 or 4 years.
Well,
and I don't even hunt for myself.
Deer around 10 years ago too. It's not like it's making that big of an impact.
So there's so many things that have changed, and I think people's tolerance level, if they knew that they were going to get that tag where they could kill a 350 or better bull, so I'm okay with just getting a guaranteed general season elk tag and a deer tag every 3 or 4 years. Well, now if there's a chance that I'm not even going to get a general elk tag, so I have nothing to hunt at all, my personal tolerance level for those limited entry units has gone down. If I know that I've got a less than, maybe 100 years before I pull one of those tags, or 60 or 70 years. I mean, statistically, if you're getting into the game now, you're wasting your time.
Yeah.
If you have 15 points or less, you're wasting your time. So, what's more important, the 350 bull or being able to go on the mountain every year with your friends and family and making memories, because it's not all about just killing something.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of work to do as a hunting community across the West on figuring this stuff out. And, as more people get interested in hunting, whether it's for the kind of food component or it's from just an interest in joining somebody that inspired you to pick up a bow or a rifle, or your own kids, maybe, that you're getting out there.
Yeah. We
got to make some kind of changes to get more opportunities in front of these newer, less experienced folks that are just entering into this world. And, it's going to be a complex one because you're going to piss off people that have been in the game, paying into the system for long years. But it's obviously not ideal currently. And, there's got to be a happy medium to kind of, help the folks that have been bought in for a lot of years.
Sure.
But also a transitional period to get people more opportunities to just go hunt. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting, the surveys that we've sent out so far, we give them, they can rate what's a successful hunt. Harvesting an animal, number 1, being on the mountain with your family and friends, number 2, just getting outside. We give them 10 different answers, and harvesting an animal is almost the lowest one rated on there. Everything else is just being out on the mountain with your family is the highest rated one. And we put on just because I like to hunt. And, that's like the 3rd highest rated one. I just like to hunt, So, yeah, it's an interesting occupation. I feel more than blessed we're able to do it as an occupation. And we're really in a position to where, I tell our guides this all the time. It's not just about hunting. Like you really can have, not only have my guides' lives been impacted by the people that have come and hunted with us, just because you meet someone new every 5 days and you're doing during the peak of the hunt, if you're full time, you may guide, 16 to 20 clients a year. So you're meeting so many different people from all walks of life. But we also have, they can leave either better than how they came to our camp, or they can leave worse. So every 5 days, you as a guide for R&K can do something positive for that guy, or gal, whether it's just listening to them or talking them through something. Because literally, and I tell Andrea this all the time, in 5 days on the mountain, you will know more about that guy than his wife typically knows about him. You're in a way kind of a unlicensed therapist. You wear a lot of hats, and you can affect it. It's amazing how many emails and cards and phone calls I get from people all over the world that say, I have completely changed my life because of the experience I had with Matt on the hill. Mm-hmm. Or, one particular guide, a lady came out a couple years ago and she harvested an elk, her first elk, and her daughter had died to cancer. And they named that ridge where they harvested that elk after her daughter.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's the stuff where it's, to your point, it's just so much more than a hunt. And I know we've talked to a lot of people, know a lot of people that have gone through those really life-changing, devastating situations. And man, I'd be hard-pressed to find a better place to heal than up on a mountaintop.
I agree, totally.
Yeah, I had a client 3 years ago, and we hunted hard, and he had never killed an elk with his bow. And we got up on top of this tallest mountain, basically the hardest mountain you can hike. We got up there, and he was just crushing it and so motivated. And I had hunted with him before. This year it was different. And called this bull in to 30 yards. Comes in raking a tree. He makes a perfect shot. Goes 20 yards, tips over dead. And he just fell on his hands and knees and started crying. And I know this guy. He's a successful guy, and just, what the heck? So I walked over, I'm like, you good? He's like, yeah, man, just a lot of emotions. Anyways, we go over, get the elk. He's like, I gotta go take a leak. Goes and takes a leak. Comes back, and then he's just dead. Like, just so quiet. Almost doesn't even seem satisfied. And packed the animal off the hill, and it really bugged me. And about 3 months later, I got an email from this guy. I guess he reached out to Daniel or Andrea, got my email, and he sent me this long email saying that he had been diagnosed with cancer, thought he had beat it, killed the elk, and that's where he had all of his emotions. Then he went and took a leak, and he was just peeing blood. And he knew that it'd come back worse. And it was so much emotions. And in his email, he just said that was one of the highlights of his life. He knew that if he ended up passing due to cancer, that he went down like with one core memory that he'll never forget. And that's something that's changed my life. And he's since beat cancer and has come back. But that's something that I will never forget. And you never take it for granted. I mean, I've hunted with people that are super successful, like billionaire status, and they come to you for info and trust you, and it's something like no other job you can ever have, and you never take it for granted, and hunting can really change people's lives for the better, and I think that gets lost in the shuffle of like alpha mentality or who kills the biggest deer, who's more hardcore. Yeah. I think that can really get lost in all the noise.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, and it doesn't need to go that way. You know, we rarely will you ever see us pull a tape out in camp.
Yeah.
You can go from the highest of high and then talk score. You know, someone brings up score or whatever, and then it can. Even to people who don't know what the score, they don't even know what a 160-inch deer is or 180-inch deer even is, and they're on as high as they can get, and then you score their deer, and he's only 170, not 180, and all of a sudden they're deflated.
Right.
I mean, we don't ever talk score. It's not about the score.
For sure.
On our hunts, we certainly have ranches where they're sold at a more premium, their upper end. They are a trophy quality type hunt, so we're looking for that particular type of animal. But the vast majority of all my hunts is just an average hunt. Well, and they're the funnest ones to do by far.
Sometimes the number just it's convoluted because a lot of people don't have enough time on the mountain or experience and even knowing what that means. When you see a deer that's 160 inches on a mountainside, a lot of guys are going to look at that and be like, that is a sweet deer. Can I shoot that deer?
Absolutely.
And they have, in their mind, that might be, registering as a 180 buck. It just doesn't matter. It's like, we've never got hung up on that either. We want to try to find and challenge ourselves of finding mature, older age class animals.
Sure.
That could be big, that could be ugly, that could be freaky, whatever the case may be. Yeah. But we've always fallen back on, if it gets you excited, then you know what? Let's go try to find it. Let's go try to make it happen.
Yeah.
And, I think to kind of wrap this up, I know you got some meetings to get to, Daniel. We really appreciate your time. Loved hearing your story about how you built your business with your wife, all the challenges and the trials that you had to kind of push through and persevere to make something happen. But I have so much respect for anybody that takes a risk on themselves, bets on themselves, and just goes after a dream that they have. I think we are all exceptionally fortunate to wake up every day and do something we love. And anybody that's listening, if you have aspirations or a dream or a goal to be your own boss or to do something as a career of choice that you have passion behind, I cannot stress enough to go make it happen. Take the risk, bet on yourself.
Bet on yourself. I've done multiple businesses other than just outfitting, and have sought out the advice of very successful people, and just to get their opinion before I decide to do something. And it would blow your mind how many people I've talked to and got their advice that have told me not to do it. They said that don't do it. It's not going to turn out good for you for whatever reason. And I've just had a feeling that, you know what, I know what I can do with it. I'm going to get, and it doesn't hurt to get everybody's, successful people's opinion and advice, but don't underestimate yourself, because you ultimately know what you can do yourself.
Yeah.
And I've done a lot of things aside from hunting that I was told not to do. by a lot of very influential people, and we've been able to make them successful. Because I know what I can do, and I know what I can do with the help of my wife.
Absolutely.
Which is doubled or tripled. So don't underestimate what you can do.
Well,
speak of the devil.
If somebody's listening, Daniel, and they wanna inquire about booking a hunt, what's the best way to get a hold of you guys?
Just call my cell phone. Probably go to the website. My cell phone's on there. Instagram. I post. I don't do so much with the website, but if you go on Instagram, just type in R&K Hunting Company. My phone number's on there. Just give me a call. I call everybody back. So if you can't get me, leave me a message. You will get called back by me. So. And then I want people to, our website's fairly vague just because we have so many different things to offer.
Yeah.
So get me on the phone and then let me know what you're thinking, and I can steer you to the right ranch, the right experience, what you're looking for, because we have something to fit everybody.
Awesome.
So,
well, we can't thank you enough for joining us. We are super fired up to come out and hunt with our hunt winner, Caleb, this October. And, again, thank you for sharing your story.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for doing that. We're excited to keep working with you guys and get people introduced to hunting. And this hunt this year is going to be great. Caleb's going to love every minute of it.
Oh, man, we can't wait.
Be good.
All right, guys, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.